Before we begin, remember that this video is for educational purposes only and isn't legal advice. Case summaries are meant to support your study, not replace reading the full case. This is one of those landmark cases that shows up on the bar exam year after year. Have you ever seen an advertisement that made a massive promise and wondered if they actually have to pay up? Today, we're looking at the 1893 case that changed consumer rights forever. We'll break down how to tell a real offer from marketing fluff so you don't get stuck with a bad deal or a broken promise. First, let's talk about the excuse businesses often use when they don't want to honor a promise, the idea that they were just puffing or exaggerating. Most advertisements are just invitations to come in and negotiate, not binding contracts. However, when an ad is specific enough, like the smokeball ad promising 100, it crosses the line into a legal offer. If a business gives you specific terms and a clear reward, they might be on the hook legally. Always look for specific numbers or conditions that make an ad feel like a guarantee. The company argued their ad was just puffery, meaning it was a sales gimmick no reasonable person would take seriously. In the case, the court rejected this because the company claimed they had deposited $1,000 in a bank to prove their sincerity. If a company goes out of its way to prove its sincerity, they're likely creating a binding obligation. Be wary of companies that use high-stakes language but try to backpedal later. The biggest red flag for the Carbolic smokeball company was mentioning a specific bank account where they held reward money. This moved the ad from a vague claim to a serious promise that a court could enforce. When you see a company putting up collateral or escrows for a promise, that's a sign of a legally binding intent. If they claim to have funds set aside, hold them to it. Now, let's look at how a contract can be formed even if you never signed a piece of paper or spoke to the seller. A unilateral contract is a promise for an act made to the entire world. You don't need a specific person to sign a document. The offer is open to anyone who performs the required task. Think of a lost dogs poster with a reward. That's a unilateral contract. If you find the dog, they owe you the money, regardless of whether you called them first. In the Carlill case, Mrs. Carlill didn't need to tell the company she was using the smokeball. The act of using it according to the instructions was her acceptance of the contract. This is a vital lesson. Sometimes your actions alone can lock you into or entitle you to a legal agreement. If you fulfill the conditions of a public offer, you have likely completed your end of the deal. Normally, you have to tell someone you accept their offer, but unilateral contracts are different. The court ruled that because the company didn't ask for notification, they waived that right. If a business makes a broad promise based on an action, they can't later complain that you didn't notify them before starting. Check if the offer requires prior registrations or just performance. Quick reminder, this is a study summary, not legal advice. Always read the full judgment for complete context and nuance. Contracts require something of value to be exchanged. Let's see what Mrs. Carlill gave up that made this a real contract. The company argued Mrs. Carlill didn't give them anything in return for the 100 promise. But the court disagreed, saying the inconvenience of using the product 3 times a day was enough consideration. In the legal world, doing something you aren't required to do counts as a cost. If a promotion requires your time or effort, you're providing value to the company. The company also benefited from people using their product, as it promoted their brand and increased sales. Even if you don't pay a company directly, if your action helps their business, it can be seen as consideration. This is why freeze trials that require your data or time are often more legally complex than they look. Your engagement has a market value. The company tried to say the offer was too vague because it didn't have an expiration date. The court applied a reasonable time standard, meaning the offer lasted as long as the person was using the product. When looking at offers, reasonables is a flexible term that courts use to prevent companies from escaping their promises. If a time frame isn't stated, a court usually looks at common sense. This 19th century case still protects you today. Here's how to apply it to modern marketing and avoid getting scammed. If a modern ad makes a wild claim but includes specific details on how to claim a reward, it might be a binding offer. However, if it's clearly a joke, like the famous Pepsi Harrier jet case, courts won't enforce it. The reasonable person test is your best friend here. Ask yourself, would a normal person think this is a serious business commitment or a prank? Modern companies use terms and conditions to avoid the Carbolic smokeball trap. They'll often state void where prohibited or subject to change without notice. Always check the footer of a promotional email for these escape hatches. If those disclaimers aren't there, the company might be more legally bound than they realize. Never assume an ad is just a suggestion. If you have fulfilled the terms of a significant public offer and the company refuses to pay, it might be time to consult a consumer rights attorney. Small claims are one thing, but for larger promises, the law is often on the consumer's side. Document everything: the original ad, your proof of performance, and their refusal. This documentation is the foundation of any legal claim. The Carlill case proves that businesses can't just say whatever they want to sell products. If they make a specific promise and you follow through, they're likely in a contract with you. The big idea is to look for specificity, evidence of intent, and to always keep a record of the offers you act upon. If this helped you understand your rights as a consumer, like and subscribe for more guides that break down complex legal concepts into practical advice. Check out Bar Exam HQ for more deep dives into the frameworks that govern our daily lives. Remember, this is a summary for study purposes. Always read the full case. Thanks for watching. Remember, this is educational only. Read the full case and consult your course materials. Subscribe for more case summaries.